The night my brother let them humiliate me, I learned something I had not wanted to believe about family. Strangers can embarrass you. Coworkers can underestimate you. But when humiliation happens in a room full of people who know your history, your weaknesses, and the exact tone that will make everyone laugh, it lands differently. It does not just hurt, it rearranges what trust means. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. That is what people from polite families are trained to do. We minimize. We explain away. We tell ourselves that one ugly moment does not reveal the truth about people we have loved for years. But sometimes it does. Sometimes one room, one speech, and one silence tells you more about a relationship than 20 years of holiday dinners ever could. That is what happened to me. And what happened a few days later to my brother's company did not feel like random bad timing. It felt like reality finally catching up with a story no one in that room had wanted to hear. Stories like this are why people keep coming back to exposed stories media. Not because public humiliation is entertaining. Because behind humiliation there is usually a hidden structure. Someone wants control. Someone wants the room on their side. Someone wants to discredit the one person who keeps asking the wrong questions. And once you see that clearly, everything that follows starts making sense. My brother's name is Brandon. He was 3 years older than me and had been the center of attention for as long as I can remember. Not in a childish way. In a practiced way. He knew how to make confidence look natural, and he learned early that adults reward people who sound certain even when certainty is mostly performance. Our father admired him for that. My father respected decisiveness more than almost anything. To him, hesitation looked weak, caution sounded like fear, and people who moved fast, spoke clearly, and made others follow them were usually the ones he trusted most. My mother was different, but not enough to change the family pattern. She liked harmony more than truth when the truth threatened to ruin a room. She smoothed conflict before it could deepen. She translated harsh behavior into stress, ambition, or misunderstanding. She was not a dishonest person by nature, but she was deeply committed to peace, even when peace depended on someone else swallowing what they really felt. That left me in an interesting position. I was the quiet one, the detail person, the one who asked inconvenient questions at the wrong moment and noticed when timelines stopped matching the story people were telling. I was not dramatic. I was not jealous of Brandon. In fact, for most of our lives, I admired him. He built things quickly. First a small consulting venture, then a supply chain software company with 2 former colleagues from graduate school. By the time he was 34, people in our city were calling him one of the most promising young founders in the region. Local business magazines ran polished photos of him in modern offices beside phrases like agile leadership and visionary expansion. My parents loved it. My father talked about Brandon's company as if it were the family's shared achievement. My mother saved articles about him in a folder by the bookshelf. Even relatives who barely understood what the company actually did repeated his milestones like they were family scripture. At first, I was proud too. I mean that sincerely. I did not resent his success. I worked in financial compliance and risk review, which is not glamorous work but honest work, and I knew how hard scaling a company could be. I also knew Brandon was smart enough to build something real. The problem was not that he was successful. The problem was that once his company started growing, he stopped treating caution like part of a healthy business. He started treating caution as a threat to momentum. And because I was the person in the family most likely to point out where momentum and reality had stopped aligning, I became useful privately and inconvenient publicly. That transition happened slowly. At first, he asked for my opinion. He would send me a deck before a fundraising pitch and ask whether any assumptions looked too aggressive. He would call and ask whether a covenant term in a loan package felt restrictive. He would say he trusted me because I was the only person who would tell him what he didn't want to hear. I liked that. Not because it gave me influence, because it made me feel like our relationship still had something honest in it. He could be flashy, but I thought he still respected substance where it mattered. Then the company got bigger. New investors, more press, a larger office, a level of public attention that made every room around him feel more curated than before. That was when his language changed. He stopped asking whether assumptions were too aggressive and started asking how aggressive assumptions could be framed so they still sounded disciplined. He stopped saying he wanted honesty and started saying he wanted alignment. In founder language, alignment often means tell me the truth in a tone that doesn't slow the room down. The first time I felt real concern was during a private dinner at his house. He and his executive team were celebrating a new distribution agreement that, according to him, would change the company's entire scale profile. I asked one basic question about fulfillment capacity. He answered smoothly, but his CFO glanced down at his glass in a way that caught my attention immediately. People tell the truth in their faces long before they allow it into words. After dinner, I asked Brandon whether the new agreement depended on any assumptions around near-term client renewals that had not yet fully closed. He smiled and said only you could hear growth and translate it into anxiety. He meant it as a joke. I laughed lightly and moved on. But the answer bothered me, because he had not said no. Over the next few months, I saw more of the same pattern. Vendor payments slipping a few days later than normal, projected margins appearing healthier in public summaries than in the internal cash timing I could infer from private conversations. His team speaking about confidence more often than discipline. That last part mattered most. When a company starts using words like confidence, belief, and signal more than words like controls, visibility, and cash discipline, something is usually beginning to drift. I told him that once, not in front of anyone else, just the two of us, standing near his car after a family dinner. He listened, then put one hand on my shoulder and said, "You're very good at seeing risks. You're less good at understanding what momentum needs." I should have understood then what he was really saying. He was not asking me to be wrong. He was asking me to be quiet. The event where everything changed happened in September. Brandon's company was hosting a large private celebration after announcing what he called a transformational quarter. Investors, board members, senior employees, selected clients, local press, and close family were all invited to a rooftop venue overlooking the river. It was one of those nights designed to create belief before anyone had time to demand details. I did not want to go. Not because I was bitter, because I had recently reviewed enough of the public materials to know the confidence level being projected did not match what I believed the underlying operational strain could support. Not fraud, not necessarily, but fragility. And fragility becomes dangerous when people start performing triumph too early. Still, my mother insisted. She said families show up. My father said if I had concerns, there would be time to raise them later, but public events were not the place to broadcast skepticism. That sentence told me everything about the hierarchy in our family. Public image first, truth afterward, if convenient. So I went. The room looked exactly like Brandon wanted it to look. Expensive lighting, perfectly timed champagne service. A stage with the company logo projected behind it in blue and silver. Everyone dressed like the night already belonged in a magazine profile about regional success. Brandon was in his element. He moved through the room with that effortless certainty people mistake for depth. He knew investors by first name, thanked board members in language that sounded humble while still reinforcing his centrality, and made his employees feel like they were part of something larger than themselves. He was very good at that. For the first hour, I kept to the edge of the room. I spoke to one supplier, one investor's spouse, and two people from the company's legal side who looked more tired than celebratory. That alone told me something. Good lawyers at a celebration should not look worried. Then came the speech. Brandon stepped onto the stage and began with the usual founder language. Resilience, vision, the future, our people, the next chapter. The room loved it. Then he started talking about risk. He said every growing company needs believers, builders, and at least one person whose job is to imagine every possible disaster before breakfast. The room laughed politely. Then he looked directly at me. He smiled and said, "My brother's in the room tonight, and if our expansion had been left to him, we'd still be debating whether optimism is compliant." The room laughed. Not huge at first, just enough to establish a frame. I smiled once because that is what people do when they become a joke before they have time to choose dignity. He kept going. He said, "Every business needs someone to check the math. We just try not to let him near the microphone." More laughter. Louder this time. Because now the room understood my role. I was not the serious brother with legitimate concerns. I was the nervous, internal voice whose caution made Brandon's confidence seem even more impressive. Then one of his investors shouted, "That's why founders lead and accountants panic." The room laughed again. My father laughed. My mother smiled the way people smile when they know something has gone too far but are too invested in the atmosphere to stop it. And Brandon just stood there, letting it happen, which told me all I needed to know. He was not embarrassed on my behalf. He wanted the room to see me that way. That was the worst part. Not the words themselves. The strategic purpose behind them. He was discrediting caution in a room where caution threatened the story he needed to sell. I left before dessert. No announcement. No confrontation. Just a quiet walk through the service hallway, down the hotel escalator, and out into the parking garage where the sound of laughter still felt stuck in my body. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. It was Brandon. One sentence. "Don't be dramatic." The room loved the energy. That message ended any remaining doubt. He knew exactly what he had done, and he believed my humiliation was acceptable if it helped him keep the room on his side. 3 days later, the first real sign of collapse appeared. The first sign was not public. That is how it usually happens. People think businesses fail in visible moments. In reality, they begin failing in private meetings, late payment calls, and revised assumptions long before headlines catch up. I learned about the first sign through a former contact in vendor finance. He messaged me late on a Monday asking whether Brandon's company was having temporary cash timing issues or something worse. That wording was precise enough to alarm me immediately. People in that part of the industry do not ask questions like that casually. I asked what he was seeing. He told me one of the company's key logistics partners had not been paid on the original schedule and had been given a revised timeline with unusual urgency attached to it. That by itself did not prove disaster. But when timing starts slipping after a public expansion celebration built on confidence, it means the room was never as stable as it looked. The next day, I heard from someone else. An analyst I knew from a previous consulting matter texted me a clipped line from an internal note making the rounds among smaller funds. The note questioned whether Brandon's company had overstated near-term margin visibility in connection with its recent expansion narrative. Again, not catastrophic, but not random. This was how pressure begins showing itself. Not as truth yet, as doubt. And once doubt enters markets, stories stop carrying as much weight as numbers. I did not reach out to Brandon. That is important. I did not warn him again. I did not rush in with "I told you so." After the party, I understood that he had already decided my caution was useful only in private and humiliating in public. I was done being available for both. Instead, I reviewed what I still had. Old decks he had forwarded months earlier. My own notes from conversations where he had asked for informal input. A few saved messages where I had flagged specific concerns about supplier concentration, customer timing assumptions, and cash buffers around the expansion phase. The pattern was ugly, not because one document proved a lie, because together they showed that Brandon had been warned repeatedly that the narrative he was building required cleaner underlying support than he actually had. Then came the second sign. A mid-level client deferred part of its order volume. That would have been manageable in a more balanced quarter. Under leverage and expanded commitments, it mattered. Especially because a lot of the company's public confidence appeared to depend on smooth client behavior across the exact period where volatility is most dangerous. 2 days after that, the stock dropped. Not a collapse. A hit. Sharp enough to get attention, shallow enough that optimists could still call it temporary. My father called me that evening. He did not mention the party. He did not apologize for laughing. He asked if I thought the market was overreacting. I told him I thought the market was finally noticing what internal discipline had not been honest enough to say out loud. He was silent for a long moment. Then he asked if I believed Brandon knew the company was this exposed while he was standing on that stage. I answered carefully. I said I believed he knew enough to stop mocking the one person in the room warning him to slow down. That was as close to direct as I was willing to be. But it was enough. My father exhaled sharply. For the first time in my life, he sounded less proud of Brandon than disappointed in him. That shift mattered more than the stock drop, because family businesses are not just businesses. They are moral theater. The moment the family patriarch loses faith in the lead son, the whole emotional structure starts shaking. By the end of that week, the company revised its revenue outlook. Publicly, the wording was careful. Temporary integration friction. Rephasing of client implementation. Margin pressure due to supply normalization. The usual polished corporate phrases designed to make preventable strain sound like weather. The stock dropped again. This time harder. Not enough to kill the company. Enough to wound confidence. And confidence was everything in Brandon's model. The twist came through someone inside the company. A controller I had once helped train reached out because she said she no longer trusted what she was being asked to normalize. She knew I had worked in risk review long enough to understand what she meant without her having to say it directly. Then she sent me something I had not expected. An internal slide pack dated 2 weeks before the party. 2 weeks. Inside were scenario risks tied directly to cash exposure, vendor timing, and customer concentration. The language was clinical. No panic. No drama. Just clean internal acknowledgement that the company's expansion story depended on assumptions that could fail quickly if counterparties slipped even slightly. I read the date 3 times. Then I read the executive summary. One line in particular changed everything. Public confidence must remain ahead of operational adjustment until investor sentiment stabilizes. That was not careless. That was strategy. He knew, maybe not every precise consequence, but he knew enough to understand the room at the party could not be allowed to see caution as credible. So he turned me into a joke before they could take me seriously. That realization made something in me colder than anger. If the humiliation had been ego alone, maybe time could have sanded some of it down. But this was tactical. He let them laugh because it served him. I printed the slide pack and drove to my parents' house. My mother opened the door and looked relieved until she saw my face. I set the packet on the table in front of my father and told him to read the date first. Then I told him to read the line about public confidence remaining ahead of operational adjustment. He did, slowly. Then he sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. My mother asked what it meant. He answered before I could. He said it meant Brandon knew more than he admitted while standing on that stage. It meant the jokes about me were not harmless. They were useful. My mother started crying immediately. She kept saying she thought the teasing was ugly but harmless. She thought Brandon was just being arrogant. She did not understand that arrogance can become operational strategy when image starts doing work the numbers cannot support. That night, Brandon called me. His voice was different. Not warm, not ashamed. Angry in the constrained way people sound when their control is slipping and they know someone else now understands why. He asked where I got the internal materials. I told him that was the wrong question. The right question was whether he was prepared to admit that he mocked my caution in public while privately relying on the exact concerns he was trying to discredit. He went silent. Then he said, "You always think context makes you morally superior." That answer told me he still did not understand the real problem. The issue was not that I was right. It was that he had knowingly made truth look ridiculous because he needed confidence more than honesty. The company's profits started disappearing faster after that. Not magically, structurally. Higher costs were no longer offset by the timing games they had relied on. Suppliers tightened. One lender started asking sharper questions. A larger client delayed its rollout further. When margins are already thinner than the celebration suggests, pressure compounds quickly. Publicly, Brandon kept posting photos from meetings, confident phrases about executing through volatility, language about long-term value creation and short-term noise. But the room had changed now. People smell fear faster than founders realize. And once the smell is there, every polished post reads differently. At Sunday lunch, my aunt tried once to joke that maybe the folder guy had been a little less silly than she thought. I looked at her and said nothing. That silence did more than any comeback could have. Because she understood. They had all laughed because the room allowed it. None of them had asked whether the joke was built on something more dangerous. By the end of the month, the company announced cost reductions. Not layoffs first. Just efficiency recalibration. Then came the role eliminations. Then came the board pressure. Then came the quiet, humiliating truth no one in my family wanted to speak out loud. The company had not been as strong as Brandon needed everyone to believe. And the moment he turned my caution into public weakness, he revealed exactly how much he already knew. The company did not die completely. That would have been simpler. Total collapse at least allows people to stop pretending quickly. What happened instead was slower and in many ways more painful. The business stayed alive, but smaller, weaker, and under far more scrutiny than anyone in my family had ever imagined. That mattered because it forced everyone to live with the decline in public view. Clients stayed, but not all of them. Investors did not flee, but they became colder. The board did not remove Brandon immediately, but they cut his freedom, increased oversight, and quietly changed the tone around him from visionary to overextended. That change broke my father more than the financial hit itself. He had attached too much of his own identity to Brandon's rise. He did not just see his son's success as success. He saw it as proof that the family had built something durable, admirable, and morally solid. Once that image cracked, he stopped talking the way he used to. Less certainty, more silence, more evenings sitting in the backyard without pretending he was out there for the air. My mother handled it differently. She wanted restoration before truth. That is who she had always been. She kept asking whether we couldn't all speak calmly, repair what had happened at the party, and stop making things worse while the business was under so much stress. That phrase made me realize something important. To her, the humiliation and the business decline were still separate events. To me, they were intimately connected. Not through revenge, through character. The same mindset that made Brandon comfortable mocking caution in a public room was the mindset that had helped lead the company into a dangerous place. Confidence over discipline, image over accurate pacing, momentum over humility. Exposed Stories Media exists because people need stories like this to understand something families often avoid naming. Public humiliation is rarely only about emotion. Sometimes it is a management tool, a way of lowering the credibility of the person who sees the cracks before the room is willing to acknowledge them. That is why the party still mattered even after the stock declines, the board reviews, and the profit compression. The party revealed the structure. A few weeks after the second major hit, Brandon asked to meet me alone. Not at the family house. Not at the office. A hotel bar by the interstate, which felt appropriate somehow. Neutral enough for men who no longer trusted the same version of events. I almost did not go. Then I decided I wanted to hear what his voice sounded like now that the room was gone. He looked tired when he arrived. Not broken, still polished, still careful, but the kind of tired that shows up when effort has been replacing confidence for longer than a man wants anyone to know. He ordered water. That, more than anything else, told me he was not there to charm me. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then he said he wanted to apologize for the party. I let the silence sit there. Finally, he added that he knew it had crossed a line. He knew the room had taken the joke farther than he expected. He knew he should have shut it down. That was not enough. Not because apologies never matter. Because the version he gave me still treated the humiliation like a room management mistake rather than what it really was. So I asked him directly. I asked whether he already knew about the internal scenario risks when he turned me into the family pessimist on stage. He looked at me for a long time before answering. Then he said yes. Not with pride. Not with defensiveness. Just yes. That simple answer did more than any explanation he could have offered. Because it meant the question was settled. He knew the company was more fragile than the room understood. He also knew my caution, if respected, would change the mood he needed. So he neutralized me. That is the only accurate phrase. He neutralized me socially before the numbers could do it operationally. I asked him why. He said something that I have replayed more times than I want to admit. He said, I couldn't let the room think fear was leadership. The sentence was perfect in its own broken way, because to him, that was the whole issue. He still saw my caution as fear. He still believed leadership meant protecting confidence, even after confidence had already cost the company what accurate humility might have saved. I told him then that the business did not take a massive hit because the market was cruel. It took a hit because reality had been mocked too long. He did not argue. For once, he had no language left that could make the truth look small. We sat there for another 20 minutes speaking about practical things. Board pressure, cost reductions, how our father was taking it, what he thought would happen next. None of that mattered as much as what had already been said. The brother I had once believed respected me privately, even when he found me inconvenient publicly, no longer existed as a believable version of him. Maybe he never had. My relationship with him never recovered. We still speak occasionally. Birthdays, family updates, the sort of surface-level contact people maintain when blood remains but trust has been permanently altered. I do not hate him. Hate would require more emotional closeness than I still have. My father changed more than Brandon did. A year later, he admitted something I never expected to hear. He said the reason he laughed at the party was not because he thought the joke was good. It was because everyone important in the room was already laughing, and he did not want to be the only one who made it awkward. That honesty broke my heart a little, because it meant even he had traded integrity for belonging in that moment. That is how group humiliation works. Not always through cruelty, often through cowardice spread thinly across many people who each think their one laugh does not matter. My mother apologized too, though in her own way. She did not talk about strategy or optics. She said she had seen my face and knew immediately the joke had turned wrong, but by then the room had already chosen its side and she did what she had always done. She tried to preserve peace. I told her peace built on someone else's humiliation is not peace. She cried after that, and I hated myself a little for saying it so sharply, but it was still true. Some truths need to wound the illusion before they can heal the person. As for the business, it survived, but the mythology did not. That was the real loss for my family. Not only the profits, not only the stock decline, the loss of the story that Brandon was too brilliant, too bold, too necessary to be questioned in time. Once that story died, everyone had to face something much less flattering. That our family had not simply admired confidence. We had rewarded it even when it asked us to mock caution, ignore discomfort, and protect the room instead of the truth. If there is one lesson in what happened, it is this. The moment someone turns your honest concern into public embarrassment, pay very close attention, especially if money is involved. Especially if the people laughing have something invested in not hearing you clearly. Because sometimes humiliation is not random. Sometimes it is the first public sign that your truth has become inconvenient to someone else's profit, image, or control. And once that happens, the collapse is usually already closer than anyone in the room wants to believe. They embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then their profits began disappearing. Not because I cursed them. Not because karma arrived in some magical form. Because the same arrogance that made my humiliation useful also made their success fragile. And fragile things fall hardest when they have been laughing too long to hear the warning.